Good morning, everybody. Happy Monday. We're back for another masterclass. I just taught a lesson to someone out in China. Thank you to Jonathan Young for signing up. That was really cool. That was definitely the furthest student I've ever taught. Pretty wild stuff, actually. So a few of you have asked about what to do as an adult, like what to do, like to continue your understanding. So this is going to be a quick lesson talking about the intro to the circle of fourths. Some of you might recognize it as the circle of fifths, and the initial ideas of modes of major, something that was talking about a bit last week. So I will make sure to pop those up on the screen shortly. But in the meantime, if you haven't yet, PX3 did come out with our brand new record last week. A lot of you tuned in streams. Awesome. If you have, oops, that's the wrong one. I'm sorry about that. If you have a chance, give Left Hand a spin. It's on Spotify. We're really proud of it. We'd love for you just to share it and spread it around. Enjoy it. Crank it. Treat it as your way of having a dance party on this gray Monday. So, let's begin. What is modality and what are the circle of fourths? So the circle of fourths, and I'll put that up on the screen momentarily, is a visual guide to mnemonic on how to understand your major scales and basic harmony. And the modality, mode, the word mode is a synonym for note. So there are 7 notes in a scale. So we talked about this last week when we were doing like 2-5-1s. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And again, when you get back to the same note, you have F and F. That's considered 1. It's the same pitch because it's the same letter. It's not a new note. Even though you're hitting 8 different pitches, right? Like this F and this F are obviously one's higher and one's lower. Because it's the same letter, it's considered to be the same exact number. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, right? So we'll get to that. You'll notice that when I pull up the modes, it's going to have the Roman numerals down the left-hand side with all these fancy Greco-Roman names and their usage next to it. And if you do want these as PDFs, just drop me a DM. I'll gladly send them over to you. They're just handwritten, really simple, but hopefully they can, at least expand your horizon and your knowledge, right? So moving on to what are the circle of fourths. So the circle of fourths, very simply, look like this. When you're looking at the circle of fourths, you'll notice that going around clockwise, you're going up 4 notes at a time. So the distance between C to F is 4, F to B flat is 4, so on and so forth. That was a terrible pun. Sorry about that. Going counterclockwise, you're going up in fifths. So this is something that if you look this up online, you might notice that what's on the left side of my circle is actually on the right-hand side. This conveys the same information. I do find going in fourths reveals some fun patterns. If you listen to the masterclass about 2-5-1s, check this out. Look at C, which is at the top, right? Treat that as minor, C minor. Then go to F, one to the right, F dominant, that would resolve to B flat major. So it actually shows you visually a setup of a 2-5-1 structure all ready for you, which is pretty cool. Going counterclockwise in fifths, that gives you a little bit more patterns like the Coltrane cycle, which I do want to get to at some point this week. That's when you're dealing in the motion of major thirds and beyond, which is a really cool, another ancillary pattern, but we'll get there later. So how do you decipher this thing? So I add a few bits of information to make it a little bit easier to understand. So going around clockwise, every letter represents the name and the first note of your major scale. So let's use the key of F again since I started with that. So F is at like the equivalent of 1 o'clock, right? F major starts on the note F, and it's on the side of the circle that contains flats, right? You see it's how the circle is bisected, right? So all the scales on the right-hand side only have flats in them, while all the scales on the left-hand side only have sharps. So when you're looking at flats on the right-hand side, the number on the outside of the letter represents how many flats there are. So if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, it's an order, B, E, A, D, G, C, F, the flats with that little arrow, right? So that right there, that is additive. So if there's 1 flat, it'd be a B flat. If there's 2 flats, it'd be B flat and E flat. If there's 3 flats, B flat, E flat, A flat. You know, so we always start at the beginning of our list and move ahead to move ahead in the queue. So what ends up happening is you're just thinking additively. You're not just picking and choosing random flats and sharps. Same thing applies for the sharps, right? On the left-hand side, you look at G, there's 1. So if you look at the bottom left-hand corner, the order of sharps is F, C, G, D, A, E, B. So having that order of sharps, again, it's additive. 1 sharp, F. 2 sharps, F, C. Keep going, right? These replace the notes on the scale. So if you're dealing with an F scale, which happens to have a B flat, you start on, let me flip over to me so you can see my hands here. Give me 1 second. if you start on the key of F, right, we start on F and we end on F, but instead of hitting just all the white keys, right, that doesn't sound right, that, ooh, man, tritones, remember those tritones, that's what we're dealing with right there, right? We have to replace the B right here with the B flat. Because, as we saw in the circle, and I'll pull that up again in a second, but I want you to be able to see my hands here, right? F, G, A, we said there's a B flat, so we replace the B with the B flat, C, D, E, F, right? That's your pattern for your scale. Now, what is the purpose of having this, right? It just is a good way to build your foundational understanding of harmony and scales and the such, right? So by doing so, you will be able to pull out any scale at any time. Now, this applies directly to your major scales, right? Major scales are kind of the building block of a lot of fundamental elements of harmony, which then will lead us to the idea of modes. And this is something that I'm going to just keep it brief today, but I'll try to go in depth a little bit more later on in the week if there's enough interest generated. So if we move over to the modes of major, check this out. If you remember a couple of days ago, I was talking about the difference between the cases of Roman numerals. You'll notice that number 1, number 4, and number 5 are uppercase. Those represent something that is in the world of major sounding, bright sounding, where 2, 3, 6, and 7 are lowercase, which are minor, a little bit sadder tonality, right? So this is why digital harmony is really helpful, because you don't necessarily need a chord symbol or anything like that. All you need is a Roman numeral, and you already can know the sound of the chord or the sound of the shape. So the names go Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian. Again, you don't really need to worry about the names too much. It's the numeric relationship, and it's a giant borrowing system. So let me give you an example, okay? So let's keep with the key of F as we've been talking about. So we have the key of F, right? That's starting at F and ending on F. Now let's look at Dorian, okay? So this is what you guys will use if you ever have a minor chord. So let's say you have like a G minor chord, which sounds like this, right? And the scale will sound like this. Right, it's a nice sounding scale. So let's explain how I got to that scale. That scale, we recognize that, oh, I have minor. I'm going to use Dorian, right, mode number 2. So remember, like I mentioned at the beginning, mode is a synonym for note. So you will use G as your starting note, G minor, okay? So that means that the note G is the second note, note number 2, of the major scale it'll borrow from. So if G is 2, what is 1 is the question, okay? So if G is 2, you count down 1, so one note below G is F. So that means you will be borrowing from the key of F, but starting and ending on the note G. And we know by looking back at that circle, F major has a B flat in it. So you start on this time on a G, end on a G, and you just use the same notes as your F major scale, which happens to have a B flat. So your scale sounds like this. So right there, it's a duality, right? You're either thinking as G minor in a identity of its own, or you're thinking of it as like, okay, cool, I'm borrowing from the key of F major. And borrowing from the key of F major is another way to start getting into your more outside playing substitutions, right? Again, out is playing in. It's another thing to keep in mind, pulling in from last week's discussion about the initial beginnings of playing out. So let's take this one step further. Let's look at another one that's really common, right? Mixolydian, number 5, right? So this one's used a lot in blues music, rock music, hip-hop, funk, everything, right? It's this sound. Right, that's an F dominant 9 chord, just for those of you who want to know what I'm playing, right? So if you're looking at this number 5 here, right, same principle of borrowing. So let's say we do C dominant 7, right? So that chord sounds like this. Let's add a 9, make it really pretty. Right? Isn't that so nice? Okay, so C dominant 9. So we say, okay, dominant uses mode number 5. So that means that C is the 5th note of the scale it borrows from. So if C is 5, we count down. And by counting down, we count down, so C is 5, B flat is 4, A is 3, G is 2, and check this out, F is 1. So this scale also happens to borrow from the key of F, which has a B flat in it, according to our circle of fourths. So that scale would sound like this. Here's your chord. Cool, right? Now, to kind of tie all this together in one fun way, think about when we did our 2-5-1s before. Right? Let's actually get that more on the organ so you can hear the bass. Right? So that's a 2-5-1 in the key of F. But this uses the same principle of modality because G minor, right, borrows from the key of F. C dominant 7 borrows from the key of F. And then F major is the key of F. So what you end up having is not actually three unique identities. You're just changing the perspective of one major scale. So a lot of my jazz students, what I'll do is when you're looking at a chart, is I will group together the notes for you. So by grouping them together, what you end up having is you're thinking more of it as in a unit than necessarily in a three individual identities. Now, you can obviously argue that G minor is its own thing, C dominant's its own thing, and F major is its own thing. Absolutely, because they do have new sounds, new shapes, new builds. However, okay, you want to think about it as one giant unit in the key of the major scale it's leading to. So, like, right, so we just did G minor, C7, F major, right? Let's do another one just to give you an example, right? Let's do E minor, A7 to D major 9, right? So E minor uses mode number 2. So E is the second note above D, right? E, D, 2, 1. So E borrows from D, which has, if you look at your circle, two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. So, right? So you have, then we said we had A7, dominant 7 uses mode number 5. So if A is 5, A, G, F, E, D. Check it out, borrows from D as well. Has an F sharp and a C sharp, right? Then we go back to D major, which, according to circle, has two sharps, F sharp and C sharp. So again, these units, this 2, 5, 1, this all ties into the idea of your turnarounds. These 2, 5, 1s are all just repurposing a major scale, or a major chord even, if you want to think about that. You're just building off of your extensions and everything. So when you start soloing over these, right, and this is a little bit more geared towards the jazz, you don't really do 2, 5, 1s. Well, you do, but it's like the purpose of a 2-5-1 in the cycle count is a little bit more in the jazz tradition, which is fine because that kind of birthed a lot of the hip hop and rock and everything like that when you kind of trace the lineage. But when you're looking at a 2-5-1 structure, don't necessarily think of it as three separate chords. Think of it as one giant unit. Block them together and be like, so if you see a minor 7th followed by a dominant 7th followed by a major 7th, take a second and see if they all share the same major scale. Because if they all share the same major scale, you don't need to work twice as hard to figure out three scales. You know your major scale and just repurpose that major scale on a different route. So in this case, what we just did, I repurposed the D major scale on E, repurposed the D major scale on A, and repurposed the D major scale on D major. That's how you build your 2-5-1s. So right there, that's kind of your basis of modality. So that we'll leave it there today. Keep it nice and short and sweet so I can explore some more options and not run out of ideas or overwhelm you. So just to recap, right? We have our circle of force. I'll pull this back up for you one more time. Circle of force. And again, if you guys want this at all, please let me know. I am offering private lessons, so please do reach out. Donations are greatly appreciated. This is a really hard time for us educators with a lot of the music stores all closing and all of our gigs kind of being put on hiatus indefinitely, which is fine. It gives us time to focus and be with family, which is beautiful. But anytime you want to, click that Venmo, please do so, or drop me a note. I'd love to set up a one-on-one with you. I have plenty of time. So we have our circle of force here, and then we had our modes of major here, right? And again, if you want access to these PDFs, please do not make yourself a stranger. I will gladly send these over to you. They are at the ready on my desktop here. So I want to thank you guys again so much for tuning in. This is such a fun thing. I love the fact that I get to share some of this with you, and hopefully this expands your horizons. Again, give the new PX3 record a nice spin. Left Hand came out last week. We're really proud of it. A lot of you did stream it. I was frankly humbled and honored. It really is like amazing, the numbers of you guys who streamed it. Thank you. Seriously, like what an incredible thing to see. Those numbers spiking real quick over the week. Not even a week, over the past few days. So, continue to spin it, share it with your friends. Again, donations right down that bottom. See that right there? Donations greatly appreciated. Please think about supporting your local artists. Check out other people's live streams. I hope you guys all have a great day, and I will try to do another one of these tomorrow. Have a wonderful Monday afternoon.